Welcome to another exciting edition of Cowboy Football on the Cowboy Football Roundup with Oklahoma State head coach Mike Gundy. That's Coach Gundy. I'm Dave Hunziker. We're both 50, and so that's taken care of. Let's move on to the important stuff.
Yes.
A team with a lot of expectations.
Exactly. And a lot of years.
And a lot, yeah, for the two of us, as you can see. But at any rate, a lot of expectations, a lot of excitement. So how are the guys handling the expectations, and how do you guide them in doing that?
We've been very honest with them throughout the summer and when we started camp at the end of July that they should have a good football team. They're very experienced. Anytime you have a quarterback that's played as many games as Mason has, good stable of wide receivers, young running back, some good young running backs that haven't had any experience, but we like where they're at. 4 returners on the offensive line, great punter, should have good coverage units on special teams. Going to break in a new kicker, and then our defense is really fast, in my opinion. So we just told them the truth and said, hey, you should have a good team. Depends on what you want to put into it. It's not about the coaches. There's a lot of guys in the country that can draw up really good plays. It's about the commitment that you need to make to each other and preparation and go play hard and have fun. And we want to cut it loose. We want guys to enjoy playing the game. And so that's been the message that we've given them over the last 3 weeks.
But this isn't the first time that you've gone into a season with a team with high expectations. I mean, it certainly was a case in 2011, was true in 2013, and to an extent last year.
Right.
So have you changed how you manage that over the years, you know, going back and thinking about what you did when you had other teams that had high expectations?
A little more honest with them and up front, and making sure they realize that we expect them to play well. Doesn't mean they're not going to make mistakes. But we're going to demand they give us great effort. In most positions, we have quality depth, so we expect them to play extremely hard. If they get tired, we can put another guy in. So we've changed just a little bit, but for the most part, the most important thing is them understanding the commitment they have to make to each other.
Coach Gundy and I will break down the 2017 Cowboys, also offer a historical context. How did this all get started? As we continue our conversation on the Cowboy Football Roundup with head coach Mike Gundy in a moment. The Cowboy Football Roundup with Mike Gundy is brought to you by Bud Light, proud friend of Oklahoma State athletics, famous among friends. By the visitstillwater.org Shop, Dine, and Stay partners. Be sure to shop, dine, and stay in America's friendliest college town. By Mercy Health, your life is our life's work. And by OG&E. Power at the speed of life. This is the Cowboy Football Roundup with Oklahoma State head coach Mike Gundy. And most of the time over the years, you have been able to see a really good team coming. Conversations we'll have, you'll be able to project out 2 or 3 years. In this season, we're going to be really good. Did you have 2017 pegged 3 years ago as potentially being a really good team that could be ranked in the top 10, top 5 going into the season?
I thought we would have a good group just because you have a returning quarterback. You never know from a skill position if you're going to have guys that stay for that extra year like James Washington. We had the emergence of Justice Hill. That makes a big difference. But yes, based on a quarterback that's been here for a few years, you would kind of expect that that you should have a good season. And we started to change, or we are allocating scholarships differently now, as we've talked about before. And defense has got a few more scholarships. And 3 years ago, we felt like that would start to help out now, and we believe that. So I would say the answer to that question would be yes.
Last year, you had a dominating performance in the Alamo Bowl against Colorado. You won that game 34-8. A few days before, you gave them Christmas Day off, free to be with family, friends, whatever the case may be in San Antonio. And you had, you know, obviously you had game week practices, but you scaled some things back. It seemed like you did most of your hard work in Stillwater. And then you started that game tremendously. Did the way that you organized the bowl week and how that played out impact how you organize this preseason and how you'll manage this season overall?
There's a lot of similarities there. I think the most difficult part of a coach that's my age or older certainly, and even maybe down into the mid-40s, is to understand the difference in the players, their bodies. They're all bigger and they're stronger and they're faster. The law of physics says that there'll be more collisions. And keeping them fresh mentally has allowed our teams to play well physically in the latter part of the season. And the bowl game is a great example. We played a team that had won 10 games and had been ranked in the top 10 at one point during the season. And we certainly got off to a good start and played well, but we dominated that football game. And I think the way we handled our team, not only physically, but how that allowed us to handle our team mentally, made a big difference. So we took notes of that, and we implemented some of that for preseason practice this fall.
Would you have ever thought, when you became a head coach in 2005, that would be your operating procedure, that you would cut back and scale back and be very attentive to that? Would you have ever thought that would evolve this way?
No, that's not the way that I was raised as a player in high school and in college. No, farthest extreme from the way that we played. But you know, I think part of being a good leader and being a good coach is paying attention to what's changing out there in the world, listening to other people. We've got people that work on our staff that are experts in all different areas: strength conditioning, nutrition, fitness, mental health. And I just listened to them talk, and it continued to come back to the same thing, that we're just doing too much. They're tired, they're fatigued, they're worn out mentally. Football's not fun to them. And so we said, okay, let's make that change. And I would have never thought that that's something that we would be talking about in preseason.
Stay with us. Coach Gundy and I will break down some of the key positions on the Cowboy roster when we come back on the Cowboy Football Roundup. Welcome back to the Cowboy Football Roundup with Oklahoma State head coach Mike Gundy. Let's talk about some of the key positions. And what would you say are maybe one or two key depth chart issues or position issues or competitions that have been resolved in the preseason? A couple of things that jump out.
On offense, we need to find a backup quarterback. I think at the halfway point, we like where we're at with Taylor. He's mature. He's been around a long time. He gets a little bit better every day. We have good young quarterbacks. I don't know if they're as far along as he is right now. We're going to be able to develop a backup running back for Justice. We've got as good a group of young running backs that I've seen in here during my time as a head coach. They don't have any experience, but they have really quality bodies. Football's important to them, and they're tough. Up to this point, they've shown us that they're not afraid to take a hit. So important at the running back position. And then defensively, we've got to get good play out of our corners, and the guys that are going to do it are going to be young. We've got Adrian Baker that transferred in here from Clemson that gives us a little maturity back there. But other than him, most of the guys that are going to play back there are fairly inexperienced. But what's interesting is, as I said earlier in the show, they're longer, they're taller, and they're faster than the bodies that we've worked with the last 4 or 5 years. So it's just a matter of gaining those guys' experience.
Mason Rudolph will become a third-year starting quarterback. In fact, he started, of course, the last 3 games of his freshman year, 2014. And when you add it all up, he would be the only 3-year starting quarterback, full 3 years, that you've had as head coach at Oklahoma State. People may not realize that.
Right.
How much does that matter, not only to him, but to the offensive coaching staff, that you've got a guy that's going to be a 3-year plus full-time starter?
Well, it's the most important position on the field at all levels. There's no question, because he touches the ball every play. He understands. He's got obviously has a great feel and grasp of our offense, but also really studies, takes a lot of pride in preparing for the game. He's very driven. He watches the Tom Bradys and the Aaron Rodgers and the Peyton Mannings, and he wants to be like those guys. So from a mental standpoint, we know we have a guy out there that understands it and that has seen it. Doesn't mean he's going to play perfect, but he's at least committed to playing the game at a high level.
One of the players that Mason Rudolph will be throwing the ball to during the course of the football season is wide receiver Chris Lacy. Now Allison Gappa sits down with the Cowboy wide receiver when we come back. Welcome back to the Cowboy Football Roundup. Chris Lacy has been a consistent contributor for Oklahoma State at wide receiver, but there's a lot more to him than just catching footballs. Here's Allison Gappa.
I can't wait. Like, I've been itching, waiting for the season to start since the last one ended.
Chris Lacy is Oklahoma State's fourth leading receiver and arguably the deepest receiving core in the country. Last season, along with pulling in 31 catches for 489 yards, he was a first-team academic All-Big 12 selection as an industrial engineering major.
My major is industrial engineering and management, and the workload is tough. Like, it's a lot of times where, like, a lot of my teammates, they'll be playing the game or they'll go out somewhere and be wanting me to come along, but a lot of times I had to say no because I had to finish some work or something. And after I get my degree, and if football doesn't work out, or even after football, I plan on being a director of operations for an NFL team or a big stadium or something like that, like AT&T Stadium or something like that.
How do you think numbers and math play a factor into the game of football and the way you see the game?
In football, it's a lot of geometry and physics, like angles and momentum, and like when I'm blocking, I think about momentum and angles and stuff, so like it does play a big part in it.
I think your teammates and Coach Gundy, and they always are talking about how, you know, you're the guy that isn't afraid to go and block, and a lot of times it sets up an amazing play. Yeah,
it goes with blocking, route running, all of that, like getting leverage and different angles on them, and how if they're moving this way, they can't get back this way some kind of way. So I think with blocking, it has a lot to do with angles and momentum, and like some of my teammates that don't really understand, I like try and help them out with something with blocking, and I like start talking about some kind of stuff from school, and then they'll just look at me crazy because like we're at football practice, not school or something like that.
You ever talk to Coach Dunn about it?
I have a little bit, but then he kind of gives me that same look, like look at me like, what are you talking about?
I wondered too how much of that, like analytics and physics and momentum and angles, I'm curious who studies that stuff in an NFL organization.
I mean, if they did, I could do it.
Right? Typically, NFL teams outsource analytics with a focus on acquiring future players. The unique thing about Lacy is he'd be able to offer game analysis in terms coaches and players understand.
Like, you seen the movie Moneyball?
Yes.
Yeah, like something like that.
Yeah, like you should be the advanced metrics for an NFL team. Because you see the game, you've been in the game.
And I play it and I study it.
You study it. Okay. Well, when you get picked up by an NFL team, you also need to be pitching that to them as well.
Yeah, I know what I'm capable of, so I try and maximize my abilities and try and get as high as I can.
But for now, Lacy's focused on the upcoming season. And as a senior, he's looking forward to one last ride with the preseason number 10 Cowboys.
It's just a great feeling to be a part of this group with so much recognition. So it just keeps us on our toes and makes us keep working hard so we can live up to those expectations.
Coach Gundy and I are back for a final time. We'll talk about the non-conference schedule, the unique setup for the Cowboys, and why it's an advantage for the Pokes. Stay tuned. Back for a final time on the Cowboy Football Roundup with Oklahoma State head coach Mike Gundy. Everybody wants to compare this team to 2011. That was a team that had high expectations, won the Big 12 title, beat Stanford, and won the Fiesta Bowl. So if there's one characteristic you could take off the 2011 team and give it to this team, what would that be?
We have an experienced quarterback. Whedon was only in, he was in his second year, I think. He'd been in the program.
Right, yep.
He'd been in the program a long time. we have a defense that's fast that I think is going to force turnovers, and we have tremendous skill on offense. We had really good skill players on that team that could make plays with the ball, and I think that those would be the similarities between that team and this season.
That was a very young defense. There was a lot of young guys. Now, they were quality players, but people forget, I think there were only maybe 4 guys that had started more than 6 games on defense prior to that season opener. So it's interesting how history changes things. But this team, you have a lot of guys returning that may not have started, but a lot of experience defensively.
Yeah, we have more experience across the board. That season kind of vaulted us into a different recruiting pattern, and you're seeing some of the effects of it now, in that we have younger players that are maybe more talented, and they haven't played much because there's other players in front of them that were better. Mm-hmm. Years ago, we would have already had to play most of these young players that we're hoping will develop this fall.
You start your schedule on a Thursday night at home against Tulsa. Then it's a Friday game at South Alabama and a Saturday game at Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. How much do you like having the extra day to prepare for those last 2 non-conference games?
We would always like to have an extra day. You have pros and cons with a Thursday game. It's not the best for vendors and the community. But the business decision that was made there, it's Labor Day weekend, the students, whether we like it or not, some of them are going to go home. So we catch them in town. We can start the year earlier, which gives us the extra day.
Right.
To allow another day for a road trip to South Alabama. Then that gives us another day rest to take another plane flight to Pittsburgh. And there are studies and the science behind putting 300-pound guys on planes, twice within 8 days. We have to really be careful and do a quality job of making sure they understand the nutrition aspect of it, staying hydrated, because it's not the best thing for their bodies. So it worked out great for us. There are some reasons that were not something that we thought was great, but the conference also wants us to play Thursday night games and even Friday night games every so many years. They ask that we do that. I'm not sure if we have to, but television pays the bills and they want you to. So we were able to accomplish 2 of those this year. So we should be good for a few years, and we can get back to playing on Saturdays and what the fans want. But it was a quality business decision this year, and I think it was best for all parties involved.
Looking forward to the year, Coach. It'll be fun.
Me too. Thank you.
For head coach Mike Gundy and Allison Gappa, I'm Dave Hunziker. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. The Cowboy Football Roundup with Mike Gundy is brought to you by Bud Light, proud friend of Oklahoma State Athletics, famous among friends. By the visitstillwater.org Shop, Dine, and Stay partners. Be sure to shop, dine, and stay in America's friendliest college town. By Mercy Health, your life is our life's work. And by OG&E, power at the speed of life.